After the book The Three Railway Engines, on October 18, 1946, the book Thomas the Tank Engine was published, which was the start of one of the most popular steam engines on Earth, if not the most well-known. Let's take a look into the history of the famous Blue Engine and a few unexplained things about him and his history. Thomas the Tank Engine is a 060 E2 class tank engine from the London and Brighton South Coast Railway, who arrived on the island of Sodor in 1915, but no one knows how. His driver and fireman got along with the other workers and citizens of Sodor and married Sodor girls. Thomas and his crew became so close that neither of them wanted to leave their engine, or Sodor itself. When Sir Topham Hatt was trying to find research on the little blue tank engine, he found the LBSC had labeled Thomas as lost in the war. In the NWR timeline, World War I had happened a year before Thomas had arrived on Sodor. For unknown reasons, the LBSC quietly sold Thomas to Sodor. Once Thomas was in the NWR, he shunted the coaches for the bigger engines at Vickerstown Station. After a long period at Vickerstown, Thomas wanted to see the world, which meant he wanted to leave the big station and wanted to explore the railway farther than he was. After an incident with the truck, Sir Topham Hatt moved Thomas from Vickerstown to Wellsworth Station. After helping James, who had just arrived on Sodor, out of an accident, Sir Topham Hatt rewarded Thomas with a new job. He was soon sent to Farquhar and given 2 coaches named Annie and Clarabelle, where he still works to this day. I would assume because his driver and fireman didn't want to part with their engine, they moved to Farquhar Village. Now here are a few things that were never explained anywhere. Firstly is, why was his back buffer beam and cab designed like this? This has been a staple of his design for years, and there hasn't been much of an explanation as to why these changes were made. The way his cab is, to me, is a bit of an upgrade, as the driver and fireman now have more room in the cab. But as for the back buffer beam and splashers, there is no logical explanation as to why these changes were made to him. Another part of Thomas's history that isn't explained well is him being written off as lost in the war in the LBSC book. This would mean that they tried to say that Thomas was destroyed in the war, yet they sold him to another railway. Why couldn't they say he was sold to Sodor? Got to love the splicing of fiction and reality the island of Sodor, its people, history, and railways showcases. Makes the world a lot more interesting rather than just a random fictional train universe. Here's my take on how Thomas was sent to the NWR and why he was quietly sold to Sodor. So let's take a look at when the E2 class was built. Altogether there were 10 E2s built. 5 were normal E2s, the other 5 were given extended side tanks. The reason why the last 5 had extended side tanks was because the E2s, while their trial was successful, the main problem was they couldn't carry much water. Even with these improvements, none of the E2s survived today. All of them were scrapped. Their replacement was the Southern Railway USA Army tank. Thomas fans will know this engine as the basis for Rosie, but then these were replaced by the Class 07s, which was the basis for the Thomas character, Salty. This is how I see how Thomas was built. I believe that Thomas was an experimental of the 5 E2s with extended side tanks, which would probably explain why the LBSC sold him quietly, because he was just an experiment for the official E2s. He has no number because he wasn't an official member of the LBSC. He was just a test, similar to Gordon and Henry. That is my take on how Thomas was built and why he was built. How do you think Thomas was made and why the LBSC labeled him as lost in the war? However he was made, it was the start of one of the most famous steam engines in the world.